The discovery. The battlefield was silent except for the sound of wind moving through broken metal and dust. Once, this place had been alive with soldiers. Fire and screams, but now only ruins remained. The human soldier walked slowly across the shattered ground, his boots pressing into the ash. His eyes scanned the wreckage, searching for survivors, or maybe for something left behind that told the story of the fight. He had learned long ago that war never left anything clean. It always left scars on land and on hearts as he walked. He thought about the faces of his own squad, men and women who had fallen in battles just like this one. The galaxy was full of enemies, but today, this place felt emptier than usual. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. The soldier tightened his grip on his rifle, though he knew no one was supposed to be alive here. Still, his instincts told him to be careful. He stepped around the broken shell of a transport vehicle and paused. Something in the shadows moved. His body froze, his weapon ready, his breath sharp. At first he thought it was just smoke or a torn cloth blowing in the wind. But then he saw her, a figure lying against a broken wall, her body trembling, her skin was not human, pale and faintly glowing under the weak sunlight. Her eyes, half closed, showed both fear and exhaustion. She was an alien woman, but not like the fierce warriors he had fought before. This one was thin, starving, broken, as if the war had not only defeated her but crushed her soul. The soldier's training screamed at him, "Finish it." Enemies are not to be spared, yet his heart hesitated. He lowered his weapon slightly, studying her face. It was not the face of a monster. It was the face of someone desperate to live. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Only a faint rasp of breath. Her hands trembled weakly, reaching not to fight but to cling to life. The soldier knelt slowly, unsure if this was a trap, unsure if compassion would cost him everything. But when her eyes met his, something struck deep inside him. They were not the eyes of an enemy. They were the eyes of someone abandoned. He remembered the stories, how alien factions often left their weak behind. The strong survived, the weak were forgotten. That was their way, but not his. He thought of the time he had been injured, lying helpless until his commander dragged him to safety. If he had been left alone then, he would not be alive now. How could he walk away when he saw the same helplessness in her? He cursed under his breath, knowing this was madness. But still he reached out his hand. The alien woman's eyes widened in surprise. She did not understand why a human soldier would touch her with kindness. Her people had always spoken of humans as cruel, as merciless. Yet this man's hand was steady, warm, and filled with something unfamiliar. Mercy. Her body shook as she tried to move, but her legs refused to carry her. Without another thought, the soldier slid his arms beneath her fragile frame. She was so light, almost weightless, as if life itself was slipping away from her. He lifted her up and felt her head fall weakly against his chest for the first time. He carried not a comrade, not a prisoner, but something more fragile. The soldier looked around, half expecting his superiors to appear and judge him. What he was doing was against orders, against reason, but as he held her, he realized there was no turning back. He could not let her die here, not like this. Every step he took away from the ruins felt heavier. Every breath reminded him of the line he had just crossed. War demanded obedience, but his heart demanded humanity. The alien woman stirred faintly in his arms, her eyes fluttering open. She looked at him with confusion, with fear, and with a strange flicker of hope. Her lips moved again, and though no words came, a faint sound escaped. It was not language. Not yet, but it was life. The soldier stopped for a moment, staring down at her. That tiny sound changed everything. It was proof she wanted to live. Proof that saving her was not pointless. He tightened his hold, promising himself that whatever storm came next, he would face it. The battlefield stretched behind him, broken and silent, but ahead lay a path filled with uncertainty, danger and choices no soldier was meant to make. Still he walked on, carrying the alien woman against all reason. Because sometimes humanity was not about following orders. It was about listening to the voice inside that whispered, "Save her." And so on that forgotten battlefield, where ashes told the story of death, a new story began. The story of a soldier who saved an alien woman. The story of how mercy could change the stars. The choice. The soldier moved carefully through the ruins, the alien woman still in his arms. Her breathing was faint, shallow, like a candle fighting against the wind. He could feel the thinness of her body, the fragile bones beneath her skin. Every step he took was louder than the silence that surrounded him. and with every step his mind screamed at him to stop. To turn back, his orders were simple: leave no enemy alive. If his commander saw him now carrying her, he would be branded a traitor. But the soldier's heart fought against his training. He looked down at her face, at the way her eyelids fluttered, at the weakness in her frame. She was not a soldier anymore. She was not a threat. She was simply a living being who wanted to survive. The battlefield behind him had no eyes, but he still felt the weight of unseen judgment. He imagined his comrades' voices, whispering, mocking, calling him a fool, yet, when he looked at her again, he saw something they could never see. He saw a spark of life clinging to her, refusing to give up, and he knew deep inside that spark deserved a chance. He walked until he reached the edge of the ruins, where twisted metal met the wild earth. There he set her down carefully on the ground. The alien woman gasped, her chest rising and falling as if each breath was a battle. Her hands clutched the dirt, pulling at the earth like she wanted to anchor herself to life. The soldier knelt beside her, torn between fear and determination. "Why am I doing this?" he muttered under his breath. The question had no answer, only the silence of the sky. He reached for his canteen and tilted it toward her lips. At first she flinched, expecting pain, but when the water touched her mouth, she drank desperately. Her throat trembled, the sound of life returning, filling the empty air. For a moment he allowed himself to breathe. Then her eyes met his again, clearer than before. There was confusion in them. Yes, but also a question. Why was he helping her? The soldier could not answer, not even to himself. His rifle lay at his side within reach, but he did not touch it. Instead, he watched her fight for each breath, and he felt the strange ache of responsibility. The sun began to sink behind the hills, casting a crimson light over the broken land. Shadows stretched long and heavy, reminding him that night would soon arrive. Night meant danger for him and for her. Predators hunted the fields, and patrols might pass through the ruins. If anyone found them together, there would be no forgiveness. The soldier thought of leaving her, walking away before it was too late. It would be easy, one step after another, and he could pretend this never happened, but when she shifted weakly, when her thin fingers brushed against his arm, his resolve broke. She was not asking with words, but with her touch, she was begging him not to abandon her. He clenched his jaw, torn between two worlds. One world demanded duty, loyalty, and obedience. The other whispered humanity, compassion, and courage. For a long moment he stood frozen, staring at the line between the two. And then finally he made his choice. He would not leave her. He would not walk away from the life he had already decided to protect. If that meant disobeying his orders, then so be it. If that meant being hunted, then let them come. His choice was made, and he would not turn back. The alien woman, though weak, seemed to sense his decision. Her eyes softened, her breathing steadied, and she let her head fall against the wall behind her. She was still broken, still fragile, but now she was not alone. The soldier sat beside her, his rifle resting across his knees. He knew danger was coming, but in this moment, the silence between them felt different. It was no longer the silence of death, but the silence of a fragile bond. As night fell, the stars appeared one by one in the sky. He looked up at them, remembering the stories told about humans and aliens, stories of endless war, endless hate, endless fear. But here, beneath those stars, the story was different. Here a human had chosen to save an alien, and in that choice something new had begun. The soldier glanced at her once more. Her eyes were closed, her chest rising and falling, her face calmer than before for the first time. He wondered if saving her would not only change her fate, but also his own. He whispered quietly, almost to himself, "Rest now. You're safe." The words carried across the night air. Fragile but firm, the choice had been made, and the path ahead would never be the same. The struggle. The first rays of morning light fell across the ruined land. The soldier opened his tired eyes, his back pressed against the cold wall. He had not slept much, always alert, always listening beside him. The alien woman lay curled in silence, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. She looked stronger than before, but still weak, still caught between life and death. He reached into his pack and pulled out the last of his rations. The small piece of dried bread was all he had left. For a long moment he stared at it, feeling the hunger in his own stomach. He had fought wars on empty bellies before, but this time the hunger felt heavier. Slowly, he broke the bread in two and placed one half to his lips. Then he turned to her and held out the other piece. Her eyes opened slowly, confused, uncertain. At first she hesitated, her gaze shifting from the food to his face. She had been taught that humans only gave cruelty, never kindness, yet this soldier was different. Shaking hands reached forward, and she took the bread. Her lips parted, and she ate every bite careful, every swallow full of struggle, but when she finished, he saw a flicker of strength return to her. And for the first time, she lowered her head in silent gratitude. The soldier watched her, his own hunger gnawing at him. He wondered if he was a fool, giving away the very thing he needed to survive. But deep inside, he knew this was the only way forward. Each crumb she swallowed was another step away from death. Each act of care tied their fates closer, and though he did not understand why, he felt compelled to see her rise again. The day stretched long, filled with quiet struggle. Her body shook when she tried to stand, her legs refusing to obey. He supported her with his arm, guiding her gently step by step. She tried, falling, rising, falling again. Every failure made her eyes burn with frustration, but every time she met his gaze, he nodded, silently telling her not to give up, and she tried again, because she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Belief. When the sun burned high above them, the soldier searched the wreckage for anything useful. A broken canister gave him a few drops of water. A shattered crate gave him cloth to bind her wounds. Piece by piece, he built a fragile hope out of nothing. Each small act reminded him of battles past, when survival meant using everything the world gave. Now survival was no longer his alone, it was theirs at night. The stars lit the sky again, cold and endless. The soldier built a small fire, shielding it with rocks so the glow would not betray them. Across the flames, her eyes reflected the light. Still cautious, still questioning, but there was also warmth now. She studied him, this human who gave food, who gave water, who gave strength. And though her voice was still silent, her gaze spoke louder than words. It asked, why? Why save me? Why risk everything? Why choose me? The soldier had no answer he could speak. He only knew that leaving her behind would have broken something inside him, something that made him human, so he met her gaze and gave the only answer he had. He stayed. The struggle did not end with one night, nor with one act of kindness. Each day brought new trials, hunger, fear, the sound of distant patrols searching the ruins. Every moment was a reminder that danger was close. But as the days passed, she grew stronger, her steps steadier, her eyes brighter. The woman who had been starving and broken began to rise slowly from the ashes. Still, in the soldier's heart, a shadow grew. He wondered what would happen when she was no longer weak. Would she turn on him? Would she remember the old hatred between their kinds? Or would she remain bound to him by the fragile thread they had woven? He did not know, and the uncertainty weighed on him like a second war. But as he watched her sleep by the fire that night, her face calm and unafraid, he realized something had changed. The struggle was no longer only hers, it was his as well. Every step she took forward pulled him deeper into a path he had never planned to walk. And though fear whispered of betrayal, hope whispered louder. Hope that saving her meant more than just survival. Hope that this struggle was the beginning of something neither of them could yet see. The transformation. The night was colder than before, the fire burning low between them. The soldier sat with his rifle across his knees, his eyes scanning the horizon. But even as he watched for danger, his thoughts kept returning to her. The alien woman who only days ago had been starving, broken and almost gone. Now something in her was changing, something he could not explain. Her skin, once pale and dull, now shimmered faintly under the starlight. It was as though her body absorbed the warmth of his fire, the kindness of his hand, and the food he had given. Her hair, tangled and lifeless before, now glistened when the wind moved through it. Even her breathing, once shallow and weak, had grown deeper, stronger, steadier. The soldier could not deny what his eyes saw. She was transforming right before him. He remembered how fragile she had felt in his arms, as if she could vanish with one wrong step, but now when she moved even slightly, he noticed a grace hidden in her. Her hands, once trembling, now steadied as she reached for water. Her gaze, once filled with fear, now carried sparks of curiosity. The change was not only in her body, it was in her spirit. Every day she seemed to shed a piece of the broken shell she had worn. The soldier tried to remind himself that she was still alien, still dangerous, but when she looked at him across the fire, her eyes glowing with soft light. His chest tightened. There was no hatred there. No threat, only something quiet, something human-like. And yet more than human, it unsettled him. Because he knew this was no ordinary recovery. It was a transformation unlike anything he had witnessed. At dawn, he helped her stand again, his arm steady under her shoulder. This time her legs did not collapse. Slowly she took one step. Then another. Her body swayed, weak but determined. The soldier's breath caught as he realized she was walking. However unsteady, her eyes lifted to meet his, and in them he saw not fear but determination, a silent promise that she would not remain broken forever. As the day passed, he noticed her strength return faster than it should have. Wounds that should have taken weeks were closing in days. Bruises faded, skin healed smooth. It was as if something inside her was awakening, fueled not by medicine but by survival. No, not only survival, by connection, and the soldier, though trained to see only threats, could not ignore the truth. His care was changing her. At the fire that evening, she reached across the flames, her fingers brushing his hand. The touch was light, cautious, but filled with intent. The soldier stiffened, unsure if this was trust or something more. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no sound came. Still, her eyes told him enough. She was no longer afraid. She was choosing to stay with him. The soldier leaned back, staring at the stars above. He wondered if fate was mocking him, binding him to someone his people would call an enemy. But when he looked at her, the thought of leaving her never held weight. She had become more than a responsibility. She had become a mystery he needed to unravel. Because every moment with her, every small change, felt like the start of something greater. He began to fear, not for himself, but for the path ahead. What if her people came searching? What if his own discovered the truth? What if this transformation gave her powers he could not control? Yet even with fear pressing against his heart, he did not step away. He could not, because he had already chosen her survival. And now he was bound to whatever came next. The firelight danced across her features as night grew deeper. She seemed almost radiant, her form no longer frail but striking. The soldier watched in silence. Torn between duty and wonder, he had saved her life. But now she was becoming something more than life, something that might one day shake the galaxy itself. And as the wind whispered across the ruins, the soldier realized the truth. The alien woman he had saved was no longer the starving figure he found. She was transforming into something powerful, beautiful, and unknown. And he, whether ready or not, was part of that transformation. The secret revealed. The soldier could feel it. Something had changed between them. Every day that passed, the alien woman grew stronger. Not just in body, but in spirit. Her steps became steady, her eyes sharper. Her silence heavier with meaning, and he, though cautious, found himself waiting for the moment she would finally speak. It was a question that lingered in his mind like an echo. What was her story? That night, the sky was painted in deep crimson as the moons rose above the ruins. The fire crackled softly, throwing sparks into the cold air. The soldier sat across from her, sharpening his blade out of habit. She sat watching him, her gaze unwavering, as though she had something to share. For the first time since he found her, she parted her lips. At first only a whisper escaped. A sound so faint he almost thought it was the wind, but then, clearer, stronger, came a word, his name. The soldier froze, the blade slipping slightly in his hand. Her voice was soft yet powerful, carrying weight that felt unnatural. How could she know his name? He had never spoken it aloud since they met. He stared at her, his pulse quickening. "Say it again," he whispered. Almost afraid she did, her voice firm this time, and the air itself seemed to shiver. It was not just sound, it was resonance. The soldier felt it in his chest, deep and unexplainable. It was as if the universe itself had spoken through her. Her eyes glowed faintly in the firelight, and then she spoke more, slow and careful. I'm not like the others," she said, her voice heavy with truth. Her words were halting, broken, but clear enough. She told him that her people had abandoned her, not out of cruelty alone, but out of fear. She was born different, carrying within her a gift, a power her people could not control, a power they feared would one day destroy them. They had chosen exile over risk, leaving her to starve among the ruins. And for a long time she believed they were right. She believed she was nothing but a curse until he came. Until a human chose to lift her from the dust. The soldier listened, his mind racing. Every word she spoke struck him deeper than any weapon. He realized she had not simply been recovering. She had been awakening, and his kindness, his care, had unlocked what was hidden inside her. Her glowing eyes fixed on him as she spoke the final truth. "You are the reason I rise," she said. The fire crackled louder as if responding to her words. The soldier clenched his fists, unsure of what he had done. He had saved her life, but in doing so, had he unleashed something greater? Her voice carried not only gratitude but destiny, and destiny was never safe. She looked down at her hands, watching the faint shimmer of energy ripple through her skin. It was no longer weakness that shook her body, but power, raw and untamed. The soldier reached forward, instinctively covering her trembling hands with his own. Her eyes lifted wide with fear, but he shook his head. "You are not a curse," he said firmly. "You are alive, and that is enough." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. The ruins around them seemed to fade, leaving only the fire, the stars, and the bond they had built. She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "My people will come," she said, "but not to save me. To end me." The soldier's chest tightened at her words. He knew what that meant. If they found her, they would kill her without hesitation. And him with her, he gritted his teeth, his choice burning stronger in his heart. Then let them come, he thought. If he had already chosen to carry her through ruin, then he would choose again. Whatever storm her secret brought, he would face it by her side, because leaving her was no longer possible. Her fate and his were now one. The fire burned low, and the night stretched long, but neither of them felt the weight of silence anymore. The secret had been revealed, and it bound them tighter than before. The soldier looked at her one last time before sleep claimed him, and though fear pressed at the edges of his thoughts, hope burned brighter, because now he knew who she was, and he knew that her transformation had only just begun. The betrayal, the soldier had known fear before, but now it followed him like a shadow. The alien woman's secret weighed heavily in his mind. She was not only a survivor, she was something more, something her own people feared. And if they feared her, then they would never allow her to live. That truth burned inside him as the days passed. He trained his ears to catch every sound, every shift in the wind, and one night the sound he feared finally came. Distant footsteps, careful but many, moving through the ruins. He rose instantly, rifle in hand, his heart pounding. The woman's glowing eyes opened, and she whispered only one word. "They've come." From the shadows emerged figures. Armored and armed, some were human soldiers, his own allies, their faces grim. Others were alien hunters, her kind, their eyes cold and merciless for a heartbeat. The soldier could not breathe. Both sides, enemies by nature, now walked together with one purpose: to take her. A voice called out, sharp and accusing. "Traitor!" The human commander stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the soldier. "You were ordered to leave no alien alive, and yet you hide her, protect her, feed her." The soldier tightened his grip on his rifle, but he did not raise it. His eyes flicked toward the woman, who stood weak yet unyielding at his side. "She is not our enemy," the soldier said, his voice steady. His commander's laugh was bitter. "Cruel. Then she is your weakness, and for that, you will die with her," the alien hunters hissed, their weapons drawn. The night trembled with the promise of violence. The soldier stepped in front of the woman, shielding her with his body. Every instinct screamed that this was madness, but he had made his choice long ago. If they wanted her, they would have to go through him first. The first shot rang out and the battle began. Flashes of fire lit the ruins, echoing like thunder. The soldier fired, his aim true, taking down the first attacker, but there were too many. Far too many. Blades clashed, rifles cracked, the ground shook under the chaos. And still he held his ground, protecting her. Then, when his strength began to falter, it happened. The woman raised her hands, her body glowing with a brilliance that pierced the night. Energy surged from her skin, a wave of power that shattered stone and sent enemies sprawling. The air itself screamed as the ground split open beneath them. The hunters recoiled in fear. The humans froze in disbelief. She was no longer weak, no longer silent. Her power, hidden for so long, now roared into existence. Her eyes blazed like twin suns. Her voice carried across the battlefield. "You will not take me," she declared, her words shaking the very earth. The soldier turned, awe filling his chest. The broken woman he had saved was gone. In her place stood something radiant, unstoppable. The commander's voice cracked with fury. "She is a weapon, a monster. Destroy her." But even as he spoke, he trembled. The hunters who once hunted her now looked at her with terror. And the soldier, though stunned, stepped closer. He placed his hand gently on her arm, grounding her. "You are not a monster," he whispered. "You are alive." Her energy rippled, wild and dangerous, but at his touch it steadied. The ruins glowed with her light, turning night into day. Enemies who once stood tall now backed away, fear overtaking duty. But the betrayal was clear. His own allies had turned on him. There would be no going back, no forgiveness, no return to the old life. The soldier's chest heaved with exhaustion, his body bruised and bleeding. But when he looked at her, standing tall and shining with untamed power, he felt no regret. He had chosen her, and now the galaxy itself would feel the weight of that choice. The battlefield fell into silence again, the enemies retreating into the shadows. Only the soldier and the woman remained. The fire of her power fading slowly, she turned to him, her eyes filled with fear and gratitude. "I cannot control it," she whispered, her voice trembling. He shook his head, wiping blood from his brow. "Then I will stand with you until you can." The betrayal had nearly destroyed them, but it had also revealed a truth neither could ignore. She was no longer broken, no longer hidden, and he was no longer just a soldier. Together they had become something more, and the world would never see them the same again. The rise, the battlefield was quiet again, but it was not peace. Ash drifted through the air. Glowing faintly in the moonlight, the soldier stood with his chest rising and falling, his body bruised, his weapon heavy in his hands. Beside him stood the alien woman, no longer the starving figure he had once found. Her skin glowed with strength, her eyes burned with power. Her presence was like fire in the darkness. The enemies had fled, but the silence that followed was heavier than any noise. The soldier knew this was not the end, only the beginning. Word of what had happened here would spread across both worlds. Humans would call him traitor, aliens would call her threat. Neither side would forgive them, but in that silence he felt no regret. She turned toward him, her step steady, her voice soft but strong. "You saved me when no one else would," she said, "and because of you I stand again." Her words carried weight, not only of gratitude but of promise. The soldier looked into her eyes and saw what she truly was. Not broken, not cursed, but reborn. He remembered the night he first found her, weak, starving, and barely alive. Now she stood tall, radiant, and unshaken. It was a transformation that defied reason. A rise from ashes to strength, and he knew he had been part of it. He had carried her when she could not walk, fed her when she could not eat, and shielded her when the world turned against her. Now she was no longer a burden, she was his equal, maybe even more. The firelight flickered across her face, highlighting the sharp lines of her new strength. She reached out and took his hand, her grip firm, her gaze unyielding. "Where you walk, I will walk," she said, her voice like a vow. The soldier felt the weight of her promise settle in his chest. It was not just words, it was destiny. He knew the galaxy would hunt them both. He knew their path would be filled with blood, betrayal, and endless danger. But he also knew that he would never walk alone again. For in choosing her, he had gained something greater than survival. He had gained a bond stronger than fear. As dawn broke, the horizon lit up with the first light of day. The ruins around them glowed red and gold, painting the world in fire. The alien woman stood at his side, her figure outlined against the rising sun. She was no longer the forgotten exile, no longer the broken outcast. She had risen, stunning and unstoppable. And with her rise, the galaxy itself would tremble. The soldier tightened the strap of his rifle and looked forward. He was no longer just a soldier following orders. He was the guardian of something new, something that defied both human and alien laws. He was bound not by duty but by choice. The choice to save, to protect, to stand with her against all odds. Together, they stepped forward into the unknown. Each step echoed with promise, each breath carried defiance. The soldier felt the weight of the world pressing down on them, but he also felt the strength of the bond they shared, for he had seen her starving, broken and abandoned, and now he saw her rise, powerful, radiant, and unafraid. From the ruins of betrayal, from the silence of death, from the ashes of war, a new story began, a story not of enemies but of two lives bound together, one human, one alien, standing against the galaxy. And though the path ahead was uncertain, one truth was clear. She had transformed before his eyes, and with her transformation, humanity's legend was born.